Good evening. All right, I think we're good now, Rob.
All right, cheers, mate. Thank you so much. Good evening and welcome to live coverage of the RWB International Constructors Championship, coming tonight from Le Castellet, also known as Paul Ricard, down in the south of France. I'm Rob Lomas, and I'll be taking you through the action tonight. Just the 155-minute race here at Paul Ricard this evening. The last of the single 55-minute races of the season, this being the penultimate round. Currently looking at Kai Banks in the Audi R8 LMS Ultra as he is on his flying lap in qualifying. At the moment, we've got just under a minute to go, in fact 50 seconds now. And there's a fair few drivers who are showing as having not yet completed a lap time, or if they haven't gone out, as it looks quite late to be heading out on track now, then they might have fallen foul of track limits here, which, since Paul Ricard was turned originally into the high-tech test track and since then subsequently been reinvented again as a race circuit instead of a test circuit, it is so easy to get pings for track limits to run just that fraction wide, especially at Curb de Seine on the end of the back straight as Rick Binnersley crosses the line to go up into 9th place. So Mats Sjöblom just in the going past there in the background. He is currently in 22nd at the moment. So we could be getting a fairly mixed up grid here as Kai Banks has just crossed the line to go 4th quickest and now 5th quickest because Emo Plate in another one of the Audis has gone fastest of anyone. It was a cracking lap from Emo. 1 minute 55.417. That's a very, very good job. Well done indeed. Track currently showing as fast at the moment. Just a minute or so left until the end of qualifying for anyone who's still on track, just trying to squeeze that final lap in, that final run. But it looks as if we might be getting a very jumbled up grid here. Of course, Paul Ricard having as many layouts as it does, it is worth noting that we're using the tightest of the variants at the first chicane. And also, we're using the full Mistral straight in all its glory. So, quick run down through the field as best I can will happen in just a minute or two once we're ready and waiting with everyone on the grid. Yeah, full field of cars here in pit lane. It's going to be quite the sight heading into turn 1. Of course, due to the length of the race, it's also worth noting that there will be 2 mandatory pit stops during the pit window, so that's going to add another element of strategy into all of this. Just waiting until we get the cars lined up on the grid. Currently looking at the onboard of James Lacey's Lexus, the ML Fry Racing liveried car. Ignore the lap time counting away on the dashboard there. Even I could do a lap within 4 minutes and 50 seconds around here without breaching track limits. And the cars are now all lined up on the grid. It's about 2.5 minutes until the start of the race here. 3 o'clock in the afternoon in game time, track optimum. 25 Celsius track temperature, 18 degrees air temperature. It's Emo Plate on pole position from Radek Schuller. with James Lacey in third place, just ahead of Marco Badowski in the 45 Aston Martin. Eddie Warden and Kai Banks are on row 3 ahead of Dan Barnett and Magnus Dahlgren. And then on the 5th row of the grid, rounding out the top 10, we have Samuel Kruger and Harry Hottie. Nate Newcomer is in 11th on the grid, just ahead of Rick Binnersley, with Xavier Eugenie, and Damien Vilk on row 7. Craig Gilbert-Wood and Carl Shepard are on row 8 ahead of Billy Hutchinson and Matt Hodgson on row 9, with Debug and Jack Mason rounding out the top 20. Chris Brook is in 21st place ahead of Alex Goncalves, with Simon Tribeck in 23rd. And unfortunately, that's as far as I can see, because thanks to the ease at which one can accrue a track limits infringement around here, there are a lot of big names a long way down the field. Got Crawford Brown starting well down the field. I think Peter Foldeschi is usually one of the drivers who's qualifying around in the top 10, top 12. He's way down the field as well tonight. So this is going to be quite interesting indeed, especially in the early part of this race. Got just over half a minute to go here. We will wait on the grid. And we're just waiting at the moment for the engines to fire up. Cars are getting lowered off their air jacks back onto the circuit now. Last minute change of tyre pressures maybe for one or two drivers. It's going to be MO Plate leading the field around into the last couple of corners here. In towards the final corner now. Virage Dupont. And it's going to try and form up as best they can. I say that because the start-finish line's quite close and there's an awful lot of cars on track. I think they're all through the final corner safely. And the lights go green. Now, it's a good start from everyone so far. Mo still leading from Radek as they head down on the long run here into turn 1. Hard on the brakes into this third gear. Left, right chicane. Usually a bit of a pinch point here in real life, so it remains to be seen just how cleanly it goes. Not very by the looks of things. We've got yellow flags there at turn 1 and 2 right now. Currently looking at James Scott. There's Craig Gilbert-Wood in the background there. There's I think that might be a McLaren that's off as well. Now we're looking back at Dan Barnett in the Audi in 7th place at the moment as they come through the far end of the circuit for the first run onto the Mistral Straight. Barnett with Magnus Dahlgren's very distinctive looking McLaren right behind, and Sam Kruger also chasing him as well. It's still Mo leading from Radek, James Lacey in 3rd, Marco Badowski 4th, Warden 5th, Banks 6th. Now looking at Magnus Dahlgren in the McLaren. Got Sam Kruger right alongside him. Kruger maybe getting a little bit of a drop there from Bonnet. There's a collision there and big off between Kruger and Dahlgren into the wall on the fastest part of the track at the Mistral Straight. That is going to have caused an immense amount of damage to both cars there, and Magnus is slowing to a crawl. And he heads through Beausset now on the opening lap. He's dropping down 23rd, 24th. Very wisely staying off the circuit there. And there's already a car back in the pits as well. That was a big impact. Is on the longest and fastest straight in the whole game as well, where one would be in real life pulling around, or if not over 270 kilometers an hour on the run up into Scene, and that is a big impact. Kruger and also dropping down the field. Foldeshi's actually showing us in the pits, so I don't think Foldeshi may have even made the start of the race, but Dahlgren has rejoined the circuit, rejoined the race, is going again now. You can see likes of Crawford Brown up into 14th. He's had a good start. Nathaniel Shirley in 17th in the Porsche. Hugo Gomez 18th for Lexus. Chris Brook 19th. Martin Chafer, he's made a good start, made quite a few positions up as well. Kruger is in 22nd, then Billy Hutchinson, Craig Gilbert-Wood, Dahlgren, Alex Goncalves, Al Gartner, Matt Sherblum in 28th. We're now looking at Nathaniel Shirley in his Porsche, as he's got Hugo Gomez all over the back of him and Mad Al right in front of him as well, for that matter. The Lexus theoretically should have slightly better straight line speed than the Porsche. It depends whether Gomez can get a bit of a draft hit from Mad Al, which he has, and he's got back past a long time before they're going to be getting up to Scene. Excuse me, sorry, Scene being not much of a corner in a Formula 1 car, but in a GT3 car, it is an immense test of commitment as a driver. It's not a lot of braking, down only one gear, and it's taken us about 130 miles an hour, which is ideal after a 1.8 kilometre long straight. Gomez back down to 18th place as Shirley briefly gets back past him. Gomez getting back past now as they come up to the penultimate corner here. Is Gomez going to have a bit of a look up the inside? He thinks better of it at Virage DuPont, and that brings Chris Brook right into the mix there in the red McLaren. Now looking at Rick Binnersley in the Mercedes-AMG GT3. Kai Banks having the fastest lap of the race so far. Currently looking from Binnersley back towards Nate Newcomer. Massive thank you to Nate for hosting the stream this evening, as has been the case for the entire season, and Nate's doing a very, very good job in the fastest of the, in the highest placed of the Porsches at the moment, in 9th place, car number 107. Coming onto the Mistral straights now. Not what's considered Porsche territory traditionally, this the straight hit. Porsche being rear-engined, it does tend to favour a more traction-oriented circuit such as Misano, but Nate is getting a very, very good toe indeed. He's going to have a look on the run up the inside into Scene, and unfortunately we're not going to quite be able to get a glimpse of that, unfortunately. Xavier Eugeni has come into the pits in the 53 Ferrari, meanwhile, in 30th place. This group here comes through Scene now. Gomez, Chafer, Shirley, Brook. Shirley in the all-black car number 25 Porsche there. Now looking at Marco Badowski, who's got Kai Banks right there with him. And to top things off, he's also got, Kai also has Eddie Warden, not too far behind as well. Now looking at Crawford Brown in his Honda. He's got Shepherd there just ahead of him. He's got already cleared Damien Vilk in the Lamborghini. And Crawford Brown going to have a look up the inside into turn 1. He's on the inside for the corner. Is he going to be able to outbrake the Ferrari and get it hauled up? Yes, he is. There's a move there by Crawford Brown on Kevin Shepherd for 10th place, as James Lacey currently has a fairly sizable train behind him, consisting of Badowski, Banks and Warden. Here effectively the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th at the moment. We come down the Mistral straight once again. Car number 53 is shown as being stopped on track up at Scene, and it's now not showing as being stopped, but whether that's because it's moving again, I don't know, unfortunately, as Marco almost challenged there by Kai Banks, but Marco having the inside for Scene paid dividends. coming into Beausset now. Long double apex right-hander. Coming up to Bendor now, where back in the day there would have been a cheeky little chicane just before this left-hander. Now out of Bendor, you can see on the inside there's the layout that's used for bikes for the Bowl Door endurance race, and out through Virage into Virage de la Tour. Excuse me. No, so we're looking at Jack Mason now, right? So Jack Mason's coming around Courbe de Galaban and heading up into Virage de la Tour now. Then into Virage Dupont. Kind of a 19. Jack Mason in the Honda NSX GT3. As the pit window has just opened, and Hugo Gomez and Mad Al and Nathaniel Shirley have all come in for their first pit stops. No doubt wanting to try and get a bit of clear air on circuit. Meanwhile, Mason still showing as being in 15th place. There's the and Magnus Dahlgren also comes in the number 3. Harry Hottie also in as well. Kruger, Shirley, all diving into the pits to get their first pit stop out the way early on. Now we're looking at Mo Plate, who has dropped down to 8th place. So I think he may have had a bit of an off-track excursion or something there in the opening couple of laps, because Mo started on pole position. The Valvoline liveried Audi coming down the Mistral straight now towards Steen. Doesn't appear to be any damage on there, so I'm wondering if he had a bit of a spin or something on track somewhere. Not 100% sure personally. We shall see through the last few corners now. Now looking at Kevin Shepherd in the Ferrari. And now we're looking at James Lacey in the Lexus. Lacey with Marco Badowski still just under 0.8 of a second further back. Going to be a very, very good battle indeed for second place. Still not that much in it between the top 5 at the moment. No more than about a second separating any individual driver. In fact, the biggest gap is between Kai Banks in 4th and Eddie Warden in 5th. Slightly larger than the gap between James Lacey and Marco Badowski, or rather it was. That's all changed as they've gone through the first timing split. As Al Gartner comes into the pits from 22nd place. Coming down the Mistral now. Of course, Paul Ricard used to be a very, very popular test circuit for a lot of sports car teams, being relatively rural location. And also the Mistral, meaning that teams could simulate the Mulsanne Straight quite nicely. Great for testing Le Mans Aero back in the day, and also when it wasn't on the F1 calendar, and even when it was a very popular location for winter testing. Being in the south of France meant that you usually had a very, very agreeable climate in the winter. Currently looking at Matt Scherblem in 22nd place at the moment, battling with Hugo Gomez. Now looking at Craig Gilbert-Wood in the Porsche. Coming through Beausset now. Waiting it back up to the second part. Not run too wide. Brake for Bendor. Now back to Kevin Shepherd in the number 20 Ferrari. Coming down the pit straight once again. Highest placed of the drivers who have pitted so far is Hugo Gomez in the number 14 Lexus, down in 22nd at the moment. coming through the opening S's. You can also see the most sweeping of the variants there is actually the original variants, which dates back to when the circuit opened. And now we're looking at Nate Newcomer in his Porsche. Crawford Brown about a second or so behind him. And MO Plate about 0.8 of a second in front of Nate Newcomer in the Porsche. Johnny Lenz has pitted number 7 Lexus from 21st as well. Nate in currently the highest placed Porsche in the field. The next 2 Porsche drivers are Craig Gilbert Wood in 19th and Nathaniel Shirley in 23rd. Still lapping away through Beausset now. There's Jack Mason going a little bit wide there at the exit of Scene. A pretty easy mistake to make as well. Now looking back at James Lacey, he was close right onto the back of Radek Schuller. So Lacey is going to be in a very good position indeed to maybe have a look at trying to take the lead from Radek. It's not going to be quite close enough heading into turn 1 and 2, but if Lacey gets a good exit here, he might be able to have a run in at the far end of the circuit at Virage del Hotel. Currently looking back at Jack Mason and now Nate's Newcomer again. Porsche going very strongly indeed. Now back to Chris Brook in the McLaren. Yeah, BMW behind him, I think, is actually Foldeshi's car. So that's not going to be much need to worry about that for position. But coming through here now, all Constantina up to try and get the best exit they can onto the Mistral Straight. Mason going noticeably wider. Meanwhile, Schuller and Lacey are having a drag race down the Mistral Straight here. And Radek Schuller appears to, yes, indeed he is. James Lacey has in fact got past Radek Schuller for the lead of the race here on lap 7 by slipstreaming the Honda NSX driver down the Mistral Straight, letting that punch the hole in the air. And then, of course, less wind resistance, less drag for the Lexus driver. So James Lacey is now in the lead of the race in the number 15 Lexus ahead of Radek Schuller. Kai Banks currently still third ahead of Marco Badowski. And Eddie Warden rounding out the top 5. Of course, there's also a chance this will have brought Kai Banks into the mix as Marco Badowski comes into the pits for his first pit stop of the race. Marco dropping down the field somewhat as Matt Hodgson also comes in from Ferrari, car number 92. And Badowski's just left the pits. He should have also fallen a few more places down from 10th as James Lacey also now has the fastest lap of the race as well for good measure. Cracking job indeed so far. No reports of any penalties yet at the moment either. James Lacey pulling away somewhat there. Radek Schuller maybe having a little bit of tyre wear issues, perhaps. He's already, well, because Lacey has already gapped Schuller, so I'm wondering if this could be to do with the tyre pressures maybe on the Honda. It'd be an interesting one to find out. Badowski, in fact, has dropped all the way from 5th down to 18th following that pit stop. That's how close everyone is there or thereabouts so far. Kevin Shepherd has Debug right behind him. Debug gonna maybe have a little look, if not in the last couple of corners, maybe even the pit straight. Of course, this will be a completely moot point if Shepherd or Debug do decide to come into the pits. And now looking back at Radek Schuller, who has got Kai Banks with him still for company. On board with Hugo Gomez now in the 20th placed Lexus. So top. Now looking back at Kevin Shepherd, still in 10th place, still looking back to see the sight of Debug's Aston Martin. Now back with Radek Schuller. As Craig Gilbert-Woods comes into the pits in the number 8 Porsche. For many years in the 1970s and 1980s, this track was known as being the home of the French Formula One Grand Prix. And it's hosted the Grand Prix more than at any other track, of which quite a few French tracks have hosted it over the years. Here, Magny-Cours, and then going back to places like Dijon, Reims, Rouen, Clermont-Ferrand, and even Le Mans, albeit on the short Bugatti circuit, or the school circuit, as it was still effectively back in those days. And there have been some cracking circuits indeed which have hosted the French Grand Prix, not least Rouen and Clermont-Ferrand, both absolutely, utterly terrifying. Whereas by the standards of the 1970s, this was one of the safest circuits anywhere in the world. Coming through the S's now. Lamborghini just getting out of the way there to let these drivers through. Still coming through the top end of the circuit towards Virage La Sainte-Baume. Excuse me. Just coming through there now, leading onto the Mistral. Can really get quite a wide exit there. So Debug and Damien Vilk have come in for their mandatory pit stops. Down the long old straight here. Possible to pull over 280 down here in a Porsche Cup car. Still battling away. There's another Porsche there in front of them. That's a lap down, just staying out of the way. Very decisive driving there from James Lacey and especially Radek Schuller lapping him. Kai Banks trying to have a look around the outside, taking a much tighter line through there. Kai lost a little bit of time, whereas the gaps closed up slightly between the leaders. Meanwhile, Matt Sherblum is in the pits as well, but Damien Vilk has got a stop-and-go 30-second penalty, presumably for speeding in the relatively short pit lane here. It is not good news indeed. Sorry about that, I thought I was going to sneeze for a moment then. Meanwhile, looking at Nathaniel Shirley and Debug battling away for 18th place. Debug had closed up to within a 10th of Shirley on the run up towards Scene. Now looking at Peter Foldeschi in 30th place at the moment. Faldeshi setting some very, very good lap times indeed. Unfortunately, he is also 2 laps down at the moment through no fault of his own, I should add. It looks as if he may have had a bit of a technical issue earlier on. So that's why Faldeshi is down in 30th place. Damien Vilk has come in to serve his stop-and-go penalty. And Debug has also come in to serve his final pit stop as well. Currently looking towards the rear wing of Faldeshi's BMW. Currently in the iconic Falcon tyres livery. And Debug is now the first driver to have made both mandatory pit stops with 25 minutes of the pit window and just over half an hour of the race still to go. So that's going to be encouraging for Debug. Just has to get his head down and crack on now. Looking back at Jack Mason in the Honda. Currently got Martin Schaefer behind him as well. Now looking at MO plates here in the Audi, trying to fend off Crawford Brown as Dan Barnett and Nate Newcomer both come into the pits for their first pit stops. So does Rick Binnersley as well, and Jack Mason and Martin Schaefer. Excuse me, sorry. All of them just coming in now. MO plates still going. So is Crawford Brown. And Dan Barnett has also got a 30-second stop-and-go penalty now for speeding in the pit lane. He's tremendously unlucky for Dan. We're going to go on board with Emo down the Mistral. Yep, 270km/h drag race, and Crawford manages to get a bit of a slipstream on him. Crawford's got the inside for Scene and is a couple of car lengths clear as well. So Emo not quite able to get the position back from Crawford Brown. Mad Al also in the pits there as well. Mad Al also joining the select group of drivers who have made both pit stops so far in this race. In just a moment, we'll have a go at doing a quick rundown of the field as best we can. So that can wait for a couple of minutes first, though. See the drivers coming down the pit straight again. Both taking pretty clean lines through the first couple of corners. Estelle Avray coming up towards Virage del Hotel, Virage du Camp, as Kevin Shepherd and Chris Brook come into the pits for their first pit stops, heading through Virage de la Sainte-Baume and onto the Ligne Droite du Mistral. So Barnett has also come in to serve his 30-second stop-and-go penalty. Nate Newcomer also in the pits for his final pit stop. I'm looking at Craig Gilbert Woods. He's got Billy Hutchinson right there with him. Now we're looking at Matt Hodgson, who's got the unenviable, task of trying to keep Martin Schaefer at bay for just a little bit. And Schaefer outbreaks him on the run into turn one. So Hodgson is now down to 14th place after this latest group of pit stops. Now looking at Sam Kruger in the Audi. Only got one more stop left to make. He has as Barnett is showing us dropping down the order as well. Binnersley and Hutchinson both in for their second stops as well. Kruger hard on the brakes here. Turns it in. Now looking with James Lacey, the race leader, where everyone's pitted relatively early so far. Well, some of them have, excuse me. Marco Badalski, for example, is currently 7th, having made only one of his pit stops so far. The fastest driver, well, the highest placed driver on track to have made both pit stops is Nate Newcomer, as Radek Schuller comes into the pits in the number 96 Honda for his first pit stop. James Lacey, Kai Banks, Eddie Warden all still yet to pit. And Crawford Browning 4th, Emo Plate 5th, Radek Schuller 6th, Marco Badalski in 7th place in the Aston Martin, Alex Goncalves in 8th place for BMW, Hugo Gomez in 9th, Kevin Shepherd rounding out the top 10, Nathaniel Shirley in 11th, Jack Mason in 12th, Martin Schaefer in 13th, Matt Hodgson 14th, Chris Brook 15th, Craig Gilbert Wood 16th, just ahead of Nate Newcomer in another Porsche in 17th, Sam Kruger in 18th, Magnus Dahlgren in 19th, Dan Barnett in 20th, Debug 21st, Gianni Lenz 22nd, Mad Al 23rd, Harry Hottie 24th, Rick Binnersley 25th, and Al Gartner 26th is as far as I can see at the moment. Jack Mason pitting now for his second pit stop. Alex doing a good job indeed there in the BMW, currently in 8th place. Still needs to make both his pit stops, so he'll probably fall behind probably the majority of this little group of cars here, with Shepherd, Shirley, Chafer, Hodgson, and he's just dropped down to 9th because Hugo Gomez has just got past him on the Mistral Straight. Simple little slipstream there, just enough to get the job done, get ahead before seen. Barnett in 22nd at the moment. Just behind Mad Al, just ahead of Harry Hottie. Nate's still being the fastest and the highest placed driver to have made both pit stops so far. Nate still showing as being a couple of places ahead of Debug, 16th versus 19th, with Sam Kruger and Magnus Dahlgren just behind Nate and just ahead of Debug as we speak. Coming through the chicane now. Now looking on board with MO Plate at the moment. Looking towards the driver's helmets. You can see the concentration needed to drive as quickly as this around a race circuit through the smoked visor of the driver's helmet. Just a quick weather update as well. Air temperature now at 17 degrees and the track temperature, excuse me, down to around 21 at the moment. Now, down the Mistral, there's a drag race going on here between Alex Goncalves and Kevin Shepherd. Is Shepherd going to have the grunt in the Ferrari? Yes, he does, to clear Goncalves before the braking zone on the Mistral. Through scene, no breach of track limits there. Harry Hottie has come in for his second and final pit stop as well. Wide line there from Goncalves. Not quite able to get to the back of the car ahead of him, unfortunately. Meanwhile, Marco Badowski is still doing well in 7th place. Doing a splendid job indeed. All pounding round away here at Le Castellet. As Nathaniel Shirley and Matt Hodgson come in for their second and final pit stops. Some of the drivers towards the front of the field will probably have to take this as a cue at some point to come in to at least make one of the 2 mandatory pit stops. Now looking at Marco Badowski in the 45 Aston Martin, currently in 7th place at the moment, doing another fantastic job indeed. Is Marco dragging every last drop of performance from that car. Pounding down past the pit straight again. Emo has come into the pits for his first pit stop. Meanwhile, Crawford Brown is currently in 4th place at the moment. Now we're looking at James Lacey in the Lexus, another driver yet to pit. But probably showing as being part of this battle here between Shirley and Dahlgren, even though Lacey is the overall race leader and about to put a lap on them. Making use of the Porsche's relative lack of top end straight line speed, call it what you will. The Lexus does have that slight advantage in that regard, so that's why Lacey was able to put a lap on him on the run up towards scene. Excuse me, so Alex Goncalves is in the pits at the moment in the number 6 BMW. He's dropped down a few places now already as a result. Just over 20 minutes to go now here as Magnus Dahlgren nips in for his second and final pit stop. And it's Dahlgren in the pits there as Goncalves just comes out of the pits. Lacey putting a lap on him. Currently looking towards the rear wing of Debug's Aston Martin. Currently shown as being... so that will have changed though, unfortunately. He was running quite closely with Magnus Dahlgren, but due to the pit stop cycle, that gap will no doubt increase slightly somewhat. Down the Mistral once again. Kai Banks trying to get past Goncalves now. It's just got Shirley to try and clear for that matter as well. Does Kai Banks. Be interesting to see how that plays out. Heading round through out of Beausset up towards Bendel now. Here. Oh, of course, Paul Ricard. Due to being supposedly relatively flat, although there is actually probably a lot more elevation change here than I think people may realise, thanks to all the stripy painted tarmac. It does usually get derided for being a car park, or at least looking like one, although there's clearly, in my opinion, not enough concrete for it to be a car park, as that's basically the hallmark of car park design from when I was younger. Kevin Shepherd has also come in for his final pit stop in the Ferrari. He's just dropped down behind Nate Newcomer and Samuel Krüger for that matter as well. He comes out of the pits now. So looking at Al Gartner here in the Porsche, as Shepherd has a stop and go plus 30 hanging over him. Gartner doing a very good job indeed. He's got Dan Barnett behind him, Matt Sherblum, Harry Hottie, Gianni Lenz and Damien Vilk. And then the broken BMW of Peter Foldeschi in 30th place at the moment. Kai Banks is now up into the lead of the race. Slipstreaming past another driver. Not quite sure who, unfortunately. Can't quite tell. It's a Porsche. And I think I had seen him get past Goncalves earlier, so I may be thinking possibly Shirley, Nathaniel Shirley. I know for a fact that Nathaniel's car is completely just in bare carbon, so that could be a fairly logical answer to the question. Radek Schiller currently in third place at the moment, the Czech driver, doing very, very well for himself in the championship standings at the moment. That and his team as well. It's the KTM/Honda package appears to be the best one so far in the field. In fact, I can even get my championship guide up as well, which would be interesting. Assuming I can remember which piece I need to be on. Which inevitably I can't. Meanwhile, we're looking at Martin Schaefer, as he's been given a drive-through penalty actually for track limits. Radek in the pits for the second time this evening for his final mandatory pit stop. In fact, looking at the championship standings, it's currently Radek Schuller from Eddie Ward from James Lacey rounding out the top three. In the drivers' standings, it's still KTM, Honda from Audi from McLaren. In the Constructors Championship, as Martin Schaefer comes in to serve his drive-through penalty, Crawford Brown having also come into the pits as well, and Radek Schuller having also made his final pit stop. I can see the McLaren, the very patriotically liveried in the Swedish blue and yellow, for Matt Sherblum currently in the pits as well, just coming out through the pits now. Schaefer having dropped a few positions to go from 9th down to 10th or 11th, maybe more 11th or 12th kind of way. Alex Goncalves coming in for his second stop. Kai Banks coming in for his first stop. Just 6.5 minutes left on the pit window here. Still a few pit callers needing to come in, namely Al Gartner down in 23rd there in the Porsche, car number 52. He has another pit stop, excuse me. Alex Goncalves is serving his now. Other than Kai Banks, you've got James Lacey, Marco Widalski, Eddie Warden, Emo Plake, Hugo Gomez, Chris Brooks, Sam Kruger, Martin Schaefer and Craig Gilbert-Wood all yet to come into the pits. So it's going to be a very interesting last half an hour, 12-13 minutes or so. Currently 21 laps into the race at the moment. And as always, we will see them through. Kruger in the Audi doing well. They're now looking at the one of the Lexuses. James Lacey has a 30-second, stop and go penalty, I think, for speeding in the pit lane. What confused me there for a moment is that the on-screen graphics were showing it as being not his car, but Hugo Gomez's. And Gomez is well into the top 10 as well at the moment. Al Gartner, Chris Brook, Martin Chafer, Craig Gilbert-Wood and Sam Kruger still yet to make their final pit stops, although Brook and Kruger I think have both come in, so that's going to be good news for them. We're going to see what speed we're going to pull. Just 279. There's Brook coming out the pits now. As Rick, I can see the silhouette of Rick Binnersley's car just up the road there. Just wait for a more accurate timing split when we get to it through the first sector time. But yep, James Lacey, long time race leader, now with a stop and go plus 30 seconds. Is that going to be costly for Lexus come the end of the season? I don't know. Unfortunately, Lexus still have Hugo Gomez lapping in third place at the moment, and Gomez now currently showing as being in the lead of the race. So I can see Radek Schuller right behind him. No doubt there has been pit stops which have meant that Gomez is in the lead of the race. He's got, realistically speaking, he's going to have to pit at the end of this lap in order to make his mandatory pit stop, as James Lacey comes in as well. Still got Martin Chafer, Craig Gilbert-Wood yet to pit for good measure. Peter Foldeschi trying to make up as much ground as he possibly can, and then in comes Craig Gilbert-Wood and James Lacey and Martin Chafer. In fact, looking at the time, trying to see where Hugo is on the track map. I'm wondering if he's going to have extra time to make his pit stop. There's another Lexus, in the background. I think that was Chafer, so that remains to be seen. Currently looking at Matt Hodgson and Rick Binnersley at the moment. Binnersley just getting past on the inside there, so Hodgson staying in 16th. But thanks to pit stops and everything else, and that overtake, he had briefly gone up into 15th, but now back down into 16th place again. It's now showing as being up in 15th, so I'm not sure if there's been a little glitch in timing somewhere, but that shall remain to be seen, which is about a mile up the road from where they are. Currently still showing as being in 15th place as Hugo Gomez makes his final pit stop with just over 90 seconds left in the pit window and just over 9 minutes left on the clock. So that's going to be good for Hugo to get his pit stop out of the way. Of course, given how little distance there is left to the end of the race, he can probably get away with just short filling it, I think. Meanwhile, we're now back on board with Nate Newcomer in the Porsche. Nate doing a very, very good job indeed here in what is not the Porsche's strongest circuit in the game or in real life, but doing a very commendable job indeed in that car. So Billy Hutchinson there just getting passed for 20th place by Magnus Dahlgren in the McLaren. coming up towards the final corner now. Dahlgren may have had a slightly better line through there. Last 20 seconds or so in the pit window. However, I think we are all clear in that regard. Everyone has pitted so far. Remains to see what happens next for those drivers. Excuse me. Still looking at Billy Hutchinson in the number 88 Aston Martin. Then as soon as I say that, we cross over to the battle here between Crawford Brown and Emo Plate. Thinking there's only a tenth of a second between Emo and Crawford in fact has already got the position. So Crawford Brown now up into 5th place in the Honda NSX GT3, just ahead of Emo Plate. Hopefully we can bring you the gap soon. Anyway, Nathaniel Shirley is still lapping away in 9th place, excuse me. He's got Peter Foldeschi right behind him. Foldeschi not racing Shirley for position, I should clarify, as Foldeschi's a couple of few laps down so far. Coming up into the opening chicane now, Estelavre taking the tighter layout here. Meanwhile, we've gone back down the field to find Magnus Dahlgren, who is about 4 or 5 attempts now behind Craig Gilbert-Wood. Craig in the Porsche and Magnus in the McLaren, excuse me. Still close between them. Dahlgren looking as close as he ever has been in the last couple of laps now, so that'll be one to keep an eye on. We're currently looking at Rick Binnersley at the moment, who is trying to hold off Mad Al, which is easily done, as Al makes a little bit of a mistake there at the far end of the circuit just before the Mistral. And thus giving Rick Binnersley a little bit of breathing room there, but Al able to close the gap back up slightly in the slipstream there, down the Mistral straight towards Scene through Beausset now. There's Honda in front of Mason, going very wide indeed at Beausset, which is going to bring him into this little battle as well. 4.5 minutes left on the clock. Just waiting to see. Oh, bit of a moment there at Virage DuPont as Mason goes very, very wide there. I don't know if there was contact or not, but Mason right in the slipstream of Binnersley's Mercedes and trying to get back past on the pit straight. We'll keep an eye on that for you, dear viewer and listener, as to what the situation with that battle is. Coming out of Bendor now is Kai Banks in 2nd place in the Audi. Down through the last couple of corners in towards Virage DuPont once again. Just about to see Radek Schuller ahead of him. This lap and one more to go, I believe. Having had a quick little look into how long a lap roughly is here, about 1 minute 57, 1 minute 58 for the quick drivers. 3 minutes or so left, so yeah, should be time for definitely 2 more laps here at Paul Ricard, currently on board with Nathaniel Shirley at the moment. The Lamborghini of Damien Vilk there behind Matt Hodgson in the Ferrari. Hodgson doing a cracking job indeed in 15th place so far. Lacey still holding off from Binnersley there as Matt Sherblum off track at the at the final corner, excuse me, Virage Dupont. Just to let this battle between James Lacey and Debug through. Is Lacey going to have a look up the inside into turn one? He thinks about pulling out alongside, but then also thinks better of attempting the overtake. We're currently looking now at James Lacey in the Emil Fry Racing Lexus. We both know that time really is running out. There's 2 minutes left, or about the equivalent of a lap to go now, and very, very close so far as they come out onto the Mistral Straight for what is probably going to be the penultimate time. These two, as Rick Binnersley gets a drive-through penalty for track limits. Lacey getting a good run. Meanwhile, coming into the early part of the Mistral Straight and has already cleared Debug. So Debug is right in the slipstream now of the Lexus, trying to do anything he can to stay on the rear bumper and under the rear wing of that car. Meanwhile, we're now looking back at Craig Gilbert-Wood and his battle with Billy Hutchinson, as Peter Foldeschi also has a drive-through penalty now as well. Hodgson and Vilk battling away there. Vilk unlapping himself and bringing Martin Schaefer and Chris Brook to the back of Matt Hodgson's car as well. Now looking at this battle from Martin Schaefer's Lexus. Got a little while to go here. In fact, we might have enough for another lap maybe as well. It's going to be very interesting indeed. See if we do. Coming out of Virage Dupont now. And indeed, there will be another lap hit. So this battle for 15th place is going to be going on for yet another lap. Schaefer getting a better run out of the first chicane, having a look up the inside of Hodgson. Schaefer just outbraking him there, but running wide. Is that going to be enough to let Hodgson back past? No, not quite. So Schaefer sending it up into P14 there on the final lap. Hodgson back down to 15th, and with Chris Brook in the McLaren right there with him for company as well. And Samuel Krug has also caught up to this little train here as well in the Valvoline liveried Audi. Meanwhile, the first few drivers have already crossed the start-finish line. We're still looking at this battle here. I know that it's Radek Schuller from Kai Banks, Marco Badowski, Eddie Warden, Crawford Brown, Emo Plates. That's the top 6 so far. Also got Kevin Shepherd, Dan Barnett having crossed the line as well. Still looking at this battle here. Nate Newcomer, a very, very good 7th place indeed in the Porsche. Then Hugo Gomez in 8th place for Lexus. Nathaniel Shirley's just crossed the line in 9th place. James Lacey is going to probably keep the fastest lap of the race, and he's going to come home in 10th. Meanwhile, there's Debug coming home in 11th place. It's going to be Mad Al crossing the line in 12th, presumably, and Foldeschi with still with the penalty to his name there. It's going to be Mason in 13th, Schaefer 14th, Matt Hodgson 15th, Chris Brook 16th, Sam Kruger 17th, then Magnus Dahlgren, Craig Gilbert-Wood, and Billy Hutchinson, Rick Binnersley, Alex Goncalves, and Harry Hottie. Matt Sherblum there in 27th. Then we enter the tales of woe and misfortune, unfortunately, for likes of Peter Foldeschi and Damien Vilk, who are at the far end of the field. Unfortunately, you also got Gianni Lenz in 26th place there as well. So that was yet another fantastic race, and in fact Foldeschi has been disqualified, presumably for too many track limits infringements, or it's not actually taking his final penalty. It's a shame for the BMW driver. It means that BMW only have one classified car finishing the race, which is Alex Goncalves in the number 6. Wow, that was another fantastic evening's racing in the RWB International Constructors Championship. The penultimate race here at Paul Ricard, the final round next week at Kyalami is going to be 2 25-minute races. Going to be good fun indeed. My thanks to Nate Newcomer for hosting and producing the live stream here this evening. I've been Rob Lomas, and I'll be back once again as ever for the final round next week at Kyalami on the 25th of January. In the meantime, we've got the Clash of the Warriors series coming up on Saturday evening as well. Stay tuned to the Discord server for that. But as always, it's bye for now.